Dear child, it is past midnight. I am flying at hundreds of miles an hour in the darkness, thousands of feet over the Atlantic Ocean. I am traveling to Egypt. I will go to the border of Gaza at Rafah. I go because of you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ling Chu, and I would like to welcome you to Spark Animation's Animation for Change program. This program involves a series of presentations and discussions on the role that animation plays for social change. It seeks to highlight and amplify films that pursue themes that are attempting to make a difference in the world we live. Today, we will be speaking about a powerfully heart-wrenching film that is both timely and also an urgent call to action to save the lives of the Palestinian people who have been living under occupation for decades and who are currently being bombed relentlessly for the past year. This film is called Dear Child, and it is such an honor to have Devin Peters, the director of the film, with us today. Devin, it is really wonderful to speak with you.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah. When I was doing research for this interview, I was looking at your past works and realized that they are very different in every way from the film we'll be talking about today. Your portfolio is filled with a lot of commercial style types of work. And I also watched a short dramatic live action film that you made in 2013 called Lexi. I was very curious to know how you went from those types of works to directing Dear Child. So I'm wondering, could you please let us know a little bit about you and also tell us about this journey from live action to animation?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I actually started my career in the UK at the BBC, the big BBC, which has kind of taught me how to kind of think about film, how to think about TV, and I then started a bit later after I feel like I did kind of learn the craft, started working with young people actually on different film projects with them, which was really interesting. It's actually where I got an opportunity to um, make a film right from the beginning all the way to the end. And we were particularly working with young people that had learning difficulties or special educational needs. So it was really sort of quite illuminating in lots of different ways, but it was quite early in my career, so it was really exciting to actually get our hands on both the cameras and the editing process, all in the same project. And then after that, started working in commercials, as you mentioned, and commercial type content. But in the background of all of my sort of career work, professional work, I've always wanted to work on more serious projects. And actually, when I was at the BBC, I did a few documentaries which um, were more entertainment based, but they were about real people. So there was like a sort of early an early sense of, this is really interesting, and it would be great not to be constrained by the entertainment side of things. Um, I've spent about ten years in the Middle East in the United Arab Emirates, which is quite close to uh, Palestine. It's quite close to a lot of the issues that are faced in the Middle East. It doesn't have the same experience because it's kind of like a little bubble, really. But Palestine and the situation that's been going on with, um, just the destruction, not just in the last 12 months, but for the last 75 years, was something that I learned about when I was at university. And after I finished university, listening to the likes of Noam Chomsky, and others that really sort of laid the foundation in my head of what was going on when I was in my early 20s. And that's just sort of stayed with me throughout. It's just I haven't been able to express it in my work. And then what happened after October the 7th, the level of destruction and genocidal tendencies was just laid bare. And I just listened to this piece of audio from Chris Hedges. It was an article that he wrote, um, but he had it voiced um, by an amazing woman, his wife actually, who were able to create something more than what were the words that were just written on paper. And when I listened to it, I just broke down like into pieces, like for quite some time. But it sparked something in me that was, you know, the guilt of not doing anything for so long, suddenly turned into something that, this must happen. And it just happened to be the time where it was possible to, financially do it. I did try and raise some money, but also I was in a financial position to invest my time, but also my money as well into producing something. And yeah, that's kind of and I I'd worked with an amazing guy called Ben McFarlane on a commercial project the year before, who's the creative director of this project, and we just had a few conversations about it, and it was that's where it started, and it turned out quite well.
So, did you approach Chris Hedges, or like how were you able to get that piece of writing to be, basically the script of your film?
Yeah, so that was the long shot, I suppose. But Chris, being an amazing open guy, I think the first way I contacted him or tried to contact him was through his Twitter account, which is managed by somebody else who managed to pass the message on. I wrote a message in a way that I thought would get the most reaction and the most sort of, because at the time I was just like, we have to make this, we have to make it now, like it has to go out as soon as possible. Like we have to do something immediately. I was really sort of, time was so important. And I think I wrote the message in that vein. But also with, want to make something that's proper, that's special, that has the chance to actually, change some minds. And he did pass on the message to Chris. Chris emailed me and said, like, well, it's fine for you to use it. Eunice Wong also said it's fine to use my voice. It's just, just let us know what you're going to do and let's see it. But we've got our support. So that was amazing. And then it was just about, how do we actually, what are we going to make?
Let's talk about the film. What is the story about, and why make this film? Okay, what is this film story about? Why make this film? And in the end, what does this film mean to you?
Um, so the film, because we had the script and the voiceover recording to start off with, it's not normally the process that I've ever worked on before. Normally we'd have the script or we'd have the plan, and then we would decide on the voiceover artist, the pacing, everything. But because we had the voice recording, the narration already, it kind of meant that we had to approach it in a slightly different way. The story is very much about Chris Hedges, the journalist, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author, talking about from first person his experience, almost because he did actually fly to Rafah during the time when there was a lot of protests happening in October, November of 2023. And in this piece, he is writing directly to a child in Gaza, an imaginative child in Gaza, but of course there are, thousands of children that he was talking to, and talking about his own personal journey right now, but also about his guilt, about his experience of being in other wars, and how he's a war correspondent, and he's talking about his, you know, the worst part of war. One of the lines in the film was, the worst part of war is what it does to children. And one of the things that I thought was really amazing about this piece was that it it talked about children, like with all the propaganda and all the different sort of don't want to use the word disinformation, but all the kind of information that is just designed to obstruct the truth. But when you're talking about children, it's impossible to, or it should be impossible to obstruct the truth. And in this piece, he's talking very directly about children. He's talking about the guilt in which we should all feel because we haven't done anything to protect these children. And I thought that that was potentially a really good way of being able to, if we turn it into a film, a really good way in which we can break through all these sort of other barriers that have been created to, confuse us, to obstruct what's really going on, so that, we can actually try and help the situation, to help these children. And I feel like it removes some of the politics as well. So yeah, that's kind of the story. That's a lot of the reason why I wanted to do it. And I think the main sort of goal of the film, we actually also created a website which has information of how you get. So if you put your zip code in, or if you put your postcode in, if you're in the UK, you can actually find who your MP or your representative is. And there's like templates of how to contact them, where their address, their work address is, their phone number, to be able to, make your voice heard a little bit. It's important to do something else as well.
It's like it's the website dearchild.info.
Info.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think we'll
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that later. So I
sure.
want to ask you a little bit about that organization. And I didn't realize it was actually from you as well. I thought it was
Yeah,
some other entity that latched onto your film. So yeah, I'm very interested in hearing more about that for sure.
sure.
Let's um from the website Films for Action. It
Right.
states that the film takes the audience on a haunting and realistic journey through Gaza today from a child's perspective, imbued with guilt of a foreign journalist. It's stylistic, artistic, horrifying, yet hopeful that we can do better. We must. In my opinion, the film is indeed stylish, artistic, horrifying, and yes, there's a glimmer of hope there as well. The images seem so realistic, and it made me wonder whether you were able to craft these images because of personal experience on the ground, or did you have access to photos or media footage, or perhaps it's just what you envision Gaza looks like right now. So basically, I'm wondering how these images came together.
Yeah, it was from research of, they call it the first live stream genocide. There's so much material, there's so many videos and photos, iconic, already. And it was just, relatively painstaking. I mean, I've followed this. As a non-Palestinian person, I'd never suggest for a second, or a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, but I'd never suggest I'd know um, a lot about, or enough about, the situation. But from knowing a good amount, from following it over the years and reading quite a lot about it, I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, in terms of using backgrounds and the way that people looked, as close to the situation as possible within our the budget constraints that we had. So yeah, a lot of the imagery are from sort of key, what I would consider iconic moments in the conflict, in the invasion, that had happened so far at the point of when we were making the film. So, for example, the blue wrapped bodies that were being buried in mass using, big, like JCB digger type vehicles. Just insanely horrifying images, and burnt out neighborhoods, completely just rubble and destruction. So we had pictures and videos that I would share with the team. It was a really difficult process because you literally, you know, day after day, just looking at all these horrible, literally the worst sort of horrors that you can imagine, and then trying to turn them into trying to turn them into a film. So it was a very sort of surreal period of time, actually. It was very, very dark. But but yes, but it was really necessary to me to actually try and be reflective of what was happening, but to do it in a way that was as honest as possible. I was speaking with some Palestinian friends at the time as well. I'd constantly be like asking them, "Does this look realistic? Does this sound realistic?" So trying to do some quality control as well through the process.
Yeah. I can only imagine, as you were talking, I was just thinking about having to sift through such horrifying images day in and day out. It must be a mental toil for sure, for sure. Um, Thank you so much for this film, really. Um, the majority of the film is in a painterly style, using black with white and gray shades. But at the end, there's a bit of color, that glimmer of hope,
Yeah.
which I was so grateful for. How did you decide on the style of the film? And considering how dire the situation seems right now, why did you feel it was important to provide that glimmer of hope? And also, how realistic is that really?
Well, Ben McFarlane from Sunny VFX, which is the studio that where I created it with. Ben and I spent quite a few hours and sessions just sort of discussing and sharing images and ideas with each other. And Ben always liked the idea of negative space. So not having too much in a frame, or when we do have a lot in a frame, there's always a kind of separation between the character or a key object in the frame. Less was more was like a big thing, not being literal was a really big thing that we wanted to do. Let the audience kind of do a lot of the imagining, let them create their own journey to a certain extent. So that was quite important, and I think we just kind of got to a point of looking at so many different styles and so many different films, serious films and some non-serious films, and we felt this, and it was logistical as well, but we felt like we wanted it to feel real, but we also wanted to be able to allow the audience to have um, we wanted it to be more accessible and I think animation kind of can allow it to be a bit more accessible. So it's not like, you're watching, you know, 30-second piece after 30-second piece on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter of like the actual horror of what was happening. But at the same time, it needed to feel real. And then at the same time, we needed to be able to do it for a full 9 minutes within our budget. So there was like you know, I have to say, like the whole team, everybody that worked on it in a insane, like they did so much more than they could have done, and that they were paid for.
Mhm.
So it was amazing in that respect. I think in terms of the hope, the color section in the film, I think there is hope, I think there is, as even as much as, the Israeli government wants to extinguish all hope in this situation. I think the Palestinian people have proved that you can't do that. And they've they've what I think the current situation that's happening now is actually proving that, you know, the 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 immorality of the Israeli government, the immorality of the support that they're getting from other governments is what is, that's where the problem is, and that's where the hope is actually dying. Not with the Palestinian people, not with the Lebanese people, I think the hope is we're seeing who has, whose morality is decaying. So I feel like um, it was necessary to reflect that. I think reflect the real hope that is actually coming out of the region. But at the same time, I think and this film was very much designed for a Western audience,
Mm.
because we're the ones that are supporting without the support of the West, it wouldn't be happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think a Western audience needs to have an element of hope. It needs to think that, like all of us, that it's possible to make a change. So I think a big reason to have that part in the film was and it's in the script. It's in the script. Obviously not the color part, but that Chris has. There is a moment of
Yeah.
of hope, but we really wanted to reflect it because, as I say, with an audience that I think if you're trying to get people to do something, they need to believe that if they do something, it is actually going to make a change and it's not just
Futile.
useless. Sorry if my answers are a bit too long.
No,
Just tell
your
me to shut
answers
up.
are wonderful. Very succinct, very heartfelt. So I really appreciate them and the honesty behind what you're speaking. It's yeah, it's commendable for sure.
Thank you.
There are some images that I'm going to list to you that I would maybe like to hear your thoughts on them.
Sure.
Uh, I guess the thing is like, could you speak about the choices that you made to create them and also your decision on including them in the film? Okay, so
Okay.
let's talk about the headstones. Um, the headstones where there were actually names of uh, it was inscribed with Arabic language and also English language. So I'm assuming Arabic names and English names. Why that choice?
Well, they're actually real names of children who have died in Gaza. Part of the research, and I thought it was really important, was to, reflect the horror, the you know, the reality, but be real. Let's just be real about it. These are real people that are dying, real children, as young as, less than 1 year old. And the reason that it's in English as well is because it's predominantly pointed at a Western audience
Mm.
in terms of the call to action. So although headstones, wouldn't have had both languages on, but I just wanted to communicate with both audiences.
There's a very disturbing image that that's in the film. It's the target POV. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about. It's the plane. I'm assuming it's it's the over aerial shot, and it's
Yeah.
like and it looks and that there are people, all gathered in in front of this target image. Could you speak a little bit about that? I found it very, very disturbing. Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that shot's actually a live shot or a real shot, a video shot from a drone, I think, or from a helicopter around the time of the first flower massacre in Gaza, which as far as I understand and what we were learning at the time was that people were so a shipment or a truck of flour and other materials like eating materials um, got through into northern Gaza, I think, and lots of starving people would try and get some flour, get some food for their family, and they were basically gunned down. And that shot is actually from one of the or around the time of that happening. And so it just felt that it was important to include that at the time. That had just happened when we were in the late stages of the production.
Yeah.
And the scene afterwards, actually, when we see the box of the like a food donation box, bloodstained,
Hmm.
was also an exact. Although the shot is moving, where it at one point in the move of the camera angle, it's the exact frame that of a photo, an iconic photo of that situation. So I thought that it would be important to include that in the film, again, just to reflect the sort of callousness, the the horror of what's actually happening.
Why choose, the main, I'd say if there was a main character, it would be the little girl. Um, why have her wear a Mickey Mouse t-shirt?
Uh, I think it's two things really. One, I had seen not just in sort of the recent past or this recent conflict or this recent stage of the conflict, but also seen young people boys and girls in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, wearing like Western iconic t-shirts and clothes. And I thought it was also, so it was it's real, it does happen. But also I thought it was a good connection to the audience, to the sort of Western audience.
Mhm.
And also it's like it allows us to see the child as a child as well, or it helps us to see that, you just see this child as a child, that likes little characters, likes Disney, like any child would.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was sort of multiple device.
Mhm. And the olive being embraced in a hand. That's a color sequence.
Yeah. Um, that was, I think that was Ben's idea, actually. I can't take that one. So we discussed like the songbird and which is a native to Palestine, the Palestinian songbird, um, and olives. We talked about those two sort of key elements quite a lot. Food generally, but I think olives is just, such a integral part of um, not just the staple diet, but the landscape of Palestine, the olive tree. So it just felt really poignant to actually have that as the symbol of life in a way in that moment when we're talking about hope, when we're showing hope that there's a better chance. And in a way, that scene is also it's hope, but it's also what could have been. There's also it's not necessarily what will be. So yeah, it was an iconic image, sort of really steeped in the tradition, I think, of Palestine.
Yeah, I think for me, that scene was very significant because I think it really humanizes the Palestinian people, to remind people that they have a very rich culture, and that they
Yeah,
have their own type of culture, and the olive tree is very important to them. I mean, that was my take and sense of it. How and I think it's very important that we try to combat dehumanization of this population. I feel like
yeah,
that scene really makes it very simple. Hey, Palestinians are people. These children are people, and I thought that was very, very affecting. Um, let's talk about a difficult scene. And um, I had a friend a while ago that would tell me how the Israeli army was it's the most moral army in the world, and you would hear this over and over again.
yeah,
And I remember my friend. This is before I knew very much about the conflict. She said to me that before they're about to bomb anyone, they will throw down leaflets. I was kind of astounded that she would actually feel like that this was an example of a moral, moral action. Hey, here, I'm going to tell you I'm going to bomb you, so you better run. And that never sat well with me, but at that time I really didn't understand it. But when she said it to me, I felt that there's something wrong here. But here's my friend, and she believes this is good. And you have, I think, a moment of that in the film. Why did you think that was important to include that in the film?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I, I'd heard that line. It's a really sort of key propaganda line of the most moral army in the world. It sounds great, it sounds really good, but the reality, the experience, the history of that army is the opposite. I mean, of many armies, but in particular that the IDF. And I think it's a complete contradiction in terms. It's idiotic, you know, if you're about to bomb someone, you're about to bomb someone. Like what you if you're telling them to move, you're displacing them, which is, just as bad, um, potentially. And I just thought, and I actually saw one of these. I saw a piece of uh, one of these leaflets, and it just, the callousness of it, the the ridiculousness of it, um, really sort of stuck with me. They've done it many battles, many destructions that they've done in the West Bank and Gaza before, and they've claimed that it's a good thing many times before. And when I finally was able to get a copy of one, to be able to see it, it just felt really important to talk about, to show it. And I think, yeah, it's hard to put into words exactly why, but it just felt right, It just felt like it needed to be shown. And yeah, yeah, I don't know actually. It's a good question. It's just, yeah,
I felt it
I
was
don't
very
get it.
poignant. I thought it was very
Yeah,
poignant. I felt that um, the realities of that action, it's actually very horrifying as opposed to it being a moral action. Um,
yeah.
and so I thought,
Visually,
yeah,
sorry, cool.
yeah. So I thought that I actually appreciate the fact that you placed it in the film, because I think that that's a big talking point on those who feel like it's justifiable to bomb children. I mean, bomb
Yeah.
people in general. But in this film, I think the emphasis here is on the child.
I think from a visual perspective, just quickly, when we think of a child sort of looking up into the sky and things falling down, you kind of think of snow, you think of glitter, and you think of all these like, and if it's leaflets, it's like, something nice, like telling you, oh, the ice cream man's coming, or, you know, the ice cream van's coming, or something nice. But so on a visual side, I wanted to challenge the audience, and if you don't know what these things are, these leaflets and what they say, and we made it look exactly like a real one. Um, I think the intent was to make the audience go, "What is it? What is that?" That was kind of, I think, I suppose the main reason. And then when you find out, it's just like the reaction should be what you just said, um, that it's shocking.
Yeah. Um, how were you able to, filmmakers take years and years and years to come out with an animation. You somehow did it so quickly. How was that possible?
Great team. We actually thought that we were taking a long time. Um, we just had a really good team, dedicated. I really wanted to do it quickly, and so like I remember one point during the process that one of Palestinian friends said to me, I think I was talking to her in a like a flustered way, and just And obviously she was going through and still is going through so much now. And I think I was saying to her, I must have been flustered about, we just got to get it out there. We got to get this done. We've got to do this. And she was just like, why are you trying to do it so fast? Like after the conflict, after this part of this, once the bombs stop dropping, there's going to be so many people that need help. Any, mental health help, physical help, all sorts of different things. And she was like, just get it right, just do it as best as you can. And I was just like, this weight, not even weight, but just this sort of like understanding just suddenly sort of washed over me. So that was really interesting. But I think we could have done it faster, actually. It's just had other commitments at the time. Um, yeah, just a really good team. It's 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes. So I think, if it was an hour and a half, then probably would have taken a couple of years.
There are two versions of Dear Child 1 and Dear Child 2. Dear Child 1 is 1.5 minutes, and Dear Child 2 is, like you said, 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes. Why are there two versions?
The first version was very much to kind of set us up for a test the test the animation style to get something out there quite quickly once it kind of dawned on me anyway that it was going to take longer than I expected, well, longer than I hoped. But yeah, it was very much a test. It was an idea that we could create something shorter that might be more that might get on move around social media in a more effective way because shorter films, shorter videos work. So it was those three things, but mainly the testing phase. I mean, most of the team, including Ben, for quite a while thought that we were making a trailer, and I'm like, it's not a trailer. It's this is a film by itself. And like, yeah, okay, okay. And like another week later, it's like and like someone would refer to it a trailer, and I'm like, it's not a trailer. It's it's a film by itself, and actually it has a completely different ending and a slightly different message as well. Um, so yeah, I think it was just important, and what it actually allowed us to do was to perfect the animation style and to give us a a really good foundation for a longer film from a logistical perspective.
What has been the response from people who have seen your film? Have you received any pushback?
Not directly to, I haven't received any pushback directly to me. Um, Friends, family have have all been very supportive. Everybody that has come back with a response or a comment has all been positive. Positive in the sense of it's moved them. It was a painful, not painful, but a very difficult watch. Some people were scared to watch it because I told them about the project beforehand, but when they watched it, they were they were really glad they watched it, but they found it difficult to watch. It's in some festivals at the moment, and it seems to be doing really well. It's both films of a finalist. One of them has already won an award, and both the finalists and official selection and a few others. So I'm really hopeful that it will go further and get more exposure. The message, I want to get more exposure. Um, but yeah, strangely, and I expected it. Maybe it's to come, but the pushback hasn't hit me yet. Hasn't been in my face yet. One of the things about the film was very much to, not because I'm personally not political about it, but because I wanted the film to reach a bigger audience. I wanted to remove some of the political toxicity around Israel, you know, they're not allowed to being able to talk about it. So it was important to center it around the children to, but at the same time, I think it, you know, it still has a strong message about Israel. It's just a little bit, it's a little bit under the surface.
I mean, in my opinion, how are you able to push back on a film that's basically saying, stop bombing children? You know, how are
Exactly.
you morally able to push back on a film that is saying, stop bombing children? It's beyond my understanding that there could possibly be any pushback. I guess the thing they might say is, and maybe you could respond about this, is that, well, you're very one-sided. You're only speaking about the killing of Palestinian children and not, you know, other people that have been killed on the Israeli side. And what response would you have with that?
I think the good, you know, if that was brought up, is that, you know, the children, whenever in the rare occasions that it has happened on the Israeli side, it gets wall to wall exposure across all media, rightly so.
Rightly so.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, it should. Any children being killed or dying through the actions of another person or people should be abhorred, it should be opposed, it should be, you know, um, criminalized. I mean, which it is. But the problem is that when it comes to Palestinian children who die by the thousands, the exposure isn't there. The conversation, the humanization isn't there. It just becomes a number. I think I saw an article, I can't remember which outlet it was, but it like New York Times or CNN saying that rather than saying children had been a certain number of children had been killed, it said people known people under the age of 18, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
but it within the same, you know, news like front page, it talks about the other side's children being hurt, or you know, and they're talking about soldiers, but would name them as like young people or children, whereas actual children would be called people who are under the age of 18, like just to completely dehumanize it in that message, in that brief little sentence. So it's just, I think, about exposure. There's not enough of it.
Earlier in our conversation, you were talking about the Dear Child initiative. I think it's dearchild.info, like www.dearchild.info. Can you
That's right.
speak more extensively about what that organization is about and what you're trying to do with that?
When coming up with the idea of the film, I thought it was really important to try and do more than just a film. Try and allow people give people a guide as well. So you've watched the film, you'll get to the end of it, and you'll see a website or an email address, and um, it's kind of like you get to the end of the film and you're, you know, what do I do? You know, that's moved me, but what is it that I can do other than donate money? And the idea was, as well as being able to donate money, which is, you know, we do provide some links to, I think, reputable local and UN related charities, was to be able to empower people with with a toolkit to actually get their voice heard with their um, national representatives. It's early on in the initiative, Dear Child initiative, which I want to expand and also you know, improve upon the website. But the toolkit essentially is to include, if you put your zip code or your postcode, so it's the US and the UK only at the moment, but you put your address postcode in. It doesn't collect any information about you, just the postcode and zip code. And it'll pop up with the politicians that represent you locally, but also represent you nationally, whether in the Senate or Congress, if you're in the US, and provide you with ways in which to contact them and express how you feel about what's going on. And we have also included in there some templates, things you can say, things you can write, and also addresses for where their offices are and what your rights are if you decide to doorstep them, or if you decide to use your, citizens' rights to actually express your views. So yeah, it just felt like that was important to have the two bits that would link together for an issue that is so important. There's obviously a lot of people that don't think their voice can make a difference, but I think when you look at the research of popular mass movements, even just in the political sense of pressuring politicians that are already there as opposed to actually trying to change the system, when you do that, it is effective. And although I didn't include in the film this message about that actually works, we've tried to include some of that information on the website.
I think it's incredibly powerful what you're trying to do. You've made a film and you created this organization. I had, as I said earlier, I had no idea that you were behind that organization as well. So what change are you hoping for when people watch your film?
I mean, this has been going on for so long now, like shocked in a way that it's still at the intensity that it's been at when we're making the film. During the film process, I was very much thinking we're going to be too late to have any impact, or have the impact that we wanted. And in a sense, wanted to be too late, as well as, wanting to try and help. So it's like this really strange conflict internally, about that. And now that it's still at this high intense part of destruction that it's been at since the beginning, is just it again is just heightens the impact which I want the film to have, which is that people look at themselves, and all of us, including me, about what can we do, and we should be doing something, bringing out that guilt in many ways. I do want the audience to feel guilt, like I did when I listened to Chris's article the first time, and then like I did every time I watched a video or read a post from somebody in Gaza. So it's to evoke that guilt, but then also to say there is something you can do. There is some hope. It is possible to make a difference. And although I didn't say it as much in the film because the script in many ways I didn't want to change it. I didn't want to really because it felt like it was a piece of history. So I didn't really want to change it. The only thing we did change was the statistics, the numbers, so that it was reflective of when the film was actually released. But yeah, so it's very much about, that trying to that guilt, which is imbued with empathy, that idea of there is a hope, there is something that you can do, and then this is the thing that you can do, and that last part is probably more on the website than in the film. And it's always difficult to explain what you can do anyway, because
Well,
everybody's
I think your adding of the title card of the website address does that in a subtle way, but
yeah,
obviously after this film, you've watched this film, there's this title card to say, hey, if you want more information about this, those inclined to want to take action will check out your website. So I
yeah,
think you did actually successfully do that.
okay,
So Yeah, I think you absolutely successfully did that. I forgot to ask you about Malcolm Moore's. How did you get him
Hmm.
involved? How did you get his song to end the film?
Well, we I mean, we tried to reach out to him in every way that we could, and when we and he, he's been very vocal about Gaza. I mean, the song is literally about it,
Yeah.
and he actually just made it available to use for everybody in a non-commercial media, which was we'd spent a few weeks trying to get hold of him to get permission to use it, and then we're like, oh, we've already got permission. Um, but that was like a really good, positive, um, positive thing that we found out very last minute as well, because we almost had to put a different piece of music in there.
Yeah. If people would like to see your film, how can they get access to Dear Child?
So probably the best way to have a look at it is to go onto YouTube and type in Dear Child 2. We've got it as two letter I's, so Dear Child 2. And it should come up straight away.
Yeah. Devin, I'm wondering if there's something that we haven't covered here that you would like to say that you didn't have a chance to say. Um, Please do so right now.
Um, I think I would probably just re-emphasize how much of an amazing piece of writing Chris did. And I met him the start early at the start of this year, sort of halfway through production, face to face in London, which was great. Um, so that was fantastic. And he's been on the, as a non-Palestinian person, he's been on the forefront of pushing and revealing the horrors and the crimes that have been committed against them for decades and been writing about it for decades. So just want to, applaud him for all of his work. And then also just as well, again, just to re-emphasize how important Ben McFarlane was on the project as well, who, two very inspirational people.
I think I'm going to end with a very appropriate quote from Chris in the film. So Chris writes, "I hope one day we will meet." This is basically referring to a child in Gaza. "I hope one day we will meet. You will be an adult. I will be an old man. Although to you I am already very old. In my dream for you, I will find you free and safe and happy. No one will be trying to kill you. You will fly in airplanes filled with people, not bombs. You will not be trapped in a concentration camp. You will see the world. You will grow up and have children. You will become old. You will remember this suffering, but you will know that it means you must help others who suffer. This is my hope, my prayer." Devin Peters, it has been again such an honor to speak with you. Thank you for making this incredibly powerful and heartfelt film.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And just want to say that line in that you just read is one of the most moving lines in the film, I would say. Thank you.
Much agreed. Take care.
You too.